Hi there, welcome to Mac Truck Book Stop. Mike here. You may be wondering, what, back so soon? Well, there's no timeline for these videos. It's just when I finish them, it's best to get the first impression out right away. So here I am on this beautiful day with a beautiful book called In the Company of Men by Veronique Tadjo. Excuse my pronunciation of the French. She was born in Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire, to if I remember right, um, a Côte d'Ivoire man and a French woman. And she grew up in Côte d'Ivoire and then at some point has emigrated abroad and lived abroad. But she's a well-established author. I think her first book goes back to the early 90s. But this book, In the Company of Men, is about the Ebola crisis of West Africa from 2014 to 2016. And that might sound like something like, okay, I'm kind of over the pandemic stuff, or in this case, an epidemic, or something like that's already been done before. But really, I've never read anything that affected me about an epidemic or a pandemic or whatever it may be, quite as original and quite as beautiful as this. It's very short. Not long at all. I mean, I think I probably read this in a total of about 2 to 3 hours over the course of 2 days, in like a few sittings. And but after each chapter, I just had to put the book down and stare into space and just think about what I'd read. And why is it so powerful? Well, every chapter kind of looks at the Ebola crisis from a different perspective, and some of them are quite abstract and beautiful and mystical. And it really, starting right out, there's a whole chapter narrated by the baobab, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, tree. And it's a very special tree in the culture of the native peoples of this region. And this tree basically narrates how humanity, by getting away from its roots, has kind of, in a way, brought the Ebola crisis on themselves. But then the baobab tree also admires their courage and the potential of people. And in essence, this is really a story about courage. We also see in the minds of the doctors, the nurses, the people of Côte d'Ivoire facing their last moments of death or being separated from their family members in the final moments. It's an incredibly powerful work. I can't overstate that. And I do recommend it if you're at all interested. I'm not gonna. I don't think there's a lot to be spoiled, but I will try not to spoil it for you and just say, if it does interest you at any point in the video, please go check it out. I don't think enough people know about this author. There's definitely authors from the different African regions that are more well known than she is, but I think she's so far definitely one of my favorites, not just from Africa, but this is one I think one of the most moving books I've ever read. I can perhaps give an example of just how beautiful this writing is. One example. This is about halfway through the book, and just to give you the context, it's a person who is dying of Ebola and or is really suffering from all the symptoms, and is kind of at the point of almost dying, and this is their thoughts on God. Long ago, God decided to let human beings live and die without His intervention. In His infinite magnitude, the tribulations of our existence don't touch Him. Those who implore His pity are mistaken. He owns the oceans, the earth, the sky, and everything touched by light. He looks upon humanity with irritation. Rather a failed experiment, isn't it? It will take Him another eternity to come up with a better design. In the meanwhile, He races across time from beginning to end in search of inspiration. Sometimes He goes to sleep at the back of the sun and forgets who we are. His sleep is infinite. God is bored, and his boredom is frightening. He's blind, his empty pupils pierce our conscience. He's mute, his outcry penetrates our bodies. He's unique, his solitude pervades the entire universe. From fluorescent anemones to the Himalayan mountains, nothing can equal the splendor of his creation. With infinite generosity and tenderness, he thought of everything, but he got nothing in exchange, or very little, and so he felt betrayed. Now he's indifferent to everything and so weary that he's tired of eternity. To be eternal is exactly what he doesn't want anymore. How to love without end, how to be happy without having experienced sorrow. Just the poetic language. This is a book that, if you can, read it out loud or in your head, really vocalize, feel each word. It is such beautiful language, and I don't know if she's using any poetic technique specifically. From what I can tell, she is influenced by the oral traditions of Africa, and one thing I really love about this book is it does not feel the need to bring in anything excess. It is so stripped down. Every line is powerful and rich and just exploding with imagination and empathy. And one of the most beautiful things about it, as I was saying, is there's never a discussion here of identity. You're never told this character is black or white or foreigner. There's some clues that you could deduce and think, but in the end, in this life and death situation, on the front lines of treating Ebola patients, the misery that's going on around you, does it matter that this is West Africa? Does it matter, especially with the pandemic? This is a human condition novel. This is a raw confronting of our oldest enemy, disease. And I don't think that, for example, that passage I just read about talking about God is meant to be sacrilegious. It's partly very beautiful and very religious, but also how can a person suffering in this way not feel, in some sense, abandoned by their creator? And perhaps some people who really have deep, strong faith could feel that, but or would not feel that, but I don't know. It's an incomprehensible level of suffering and beauty for the people, of the courage of the people who face this oldest enemy of mankind, the virus. I don't know how much more I need to say about that. In fact, I kind of want to take a minute to collect my thoughts and decide if there is anything else I want to say about it. It is just, with it being such a short book, I'm spoiling more of it by talking more of it, but there's, for example, the scale of this book goes from the subatomic to the universal in the metaphors that it uses, the artistic level of it takes modern scientific knowledge and modern ideas, but writes them in a way that feels just so classic and economic and to the point, and I can't praise this book enough. I will reread it. I will love it. It's a novella. I guess I shouldn't be saying novel. It's a poetic novella. And with that, let me collect my thoughts and decide if there's anything else I want to say about it. So I guess just a few more thoughts about the artistic level of the novel. I mentioned it goes from the subatomic to the astronomical. This goes as deep as the metaphors. You know, the doctor in their whole bodysuit is compared to an astronaut, and there's a kind of feverish tone to this novel that represents its subject matter, but also sublime, and also kind of that as you're reading it in the moment that you're confronted with death and horror, you're also confronted by this sublime beauty, and it's just, yeah, incredible feelings about the novel. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that in the wake of COVID-19 and the virus that became a pandemic, imagine if that had been Ebola. I mean, let's not imagine that, actually. But what I'm trying to get at is this book was published 2017, and recently now is appearing in bookstores in the United States. So what can we take from that? We could have learned a lot of lessons from the Ebola epidemic of West Africa here in the United States and in other parts of the world, and yet we didn't. We did not read this book. We did not take the time to understand and think that this would happen to us. We did not consider the impacts it would have on our lives, our healthcare systems, our hospitals. And it begs the question, will we in the future fail again to learn? Will we be different this time? There might be some people who are asking, well, will somebody write, a great work of literature about the quarantine or about COVID-19? And I would say somebody already did before it even happened. And the fact that we ignored it, one that didn't take long to read, the fact that we ignored it should tell us a lot about how we should, I guess, think about this in the future, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so that is my review of In the Company of Men. Beautiful book from Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. We will see where the next book takes us. This might be my shortest review yet, but there's no need to go any further. It's a beautiful day. My lunch break's almost over, so I guess time to upload this and get back to work.